Very excited today to be joined by a panel of smart HR experts who either work for credit unions or have a strong link and are doing work in helping credit unions from across the U.S. It's very exciting. And our topic today is the future of work. And so I'm going to ask each of our panel members to introduce themselves. And I'll start with Sekou. If you could just give us a bit about your background and where you're coming from today.
Sure. Sekou Bermiss. I am a professor of strategy and entrepreneurship at the University of North Carolina. I study human capital, people analytics, HR strategy, and for 4 years I was the director of the Filene Research Institute Center for the War for Talent. And so spent a ton of time thinking about a lot of issues around work and the future of work. And so very excited to be here.
Great. Thank you very much. Rhonda.
Hello, I'm Rhonda Hall, and I lead human resources and organizational development for University Federal Credit Union based in Austin, Texas. And prior to that, thank you, Sekou. Prior to that, I was with the nation's largest not-for-profit healthcare system, responsible for 150,000 lives spread across 26 states in the District of Columbia. So it's very nice to be in a location with 800 employees. I feel like I've arrived.
Oh, that's great. So over to you, Robert.
Thanks, Lori. Hi, everyone. I'm Robert Farmer. I am the SVP of People Solutions for Clearwater Credit Union. Clearwater is located or headquartered in Missoula, Montana, and we're a values-based financial institution using finance to make the world a better place for everyone. And I've been with the organization for 24 years.
Oh, welcome. And Kamela.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kamela Pancroft. I'm the Senior Vice President of People and Planning for Credit Union of Colorado. We live in the mile-high state of Denver, Colorado. I oversee the learning and development, the human resources, and the internal communications functions. And I also help drive the strategic planning process for our organization.
Oh, that's great. Well, thanks everyone for being here today. We're going to have a great discussion about the future of work. It's so topical. I don't think I can open up a paper or go online without, 4-day work week or hybrid. These things are popping up all over the place. So I'll point the first question, Sekou, towards you. From your vantage point, the work that you're on top of today, what is that one topic that is at sort of the top of the HR radar for organizations, and one you believe that's kind of really important for the future of work?
Sure. I'm glad I get to go first because I get to take the easiest one, which is it's hybrid work, right? Hybrid work seems to be a big issue. I mean, interestingly enough for me, I was looking at kind of virtual and hybrid work since 2015, 2016, and it just so happened to become really important post 2020. So that's my benefit. So I recently completed a project with a colleague, Doug Layton, who used to be at Visa and does a lot of work in the credit union space. And we interviewed a ton of credit unions across the country and asked at multiple levels people how they felt about hybrid work. And a couple of things that I'll just point out in my view that really jumped out at me. The first is, thankfully, most credit unions are using data to make these decisions. They're using surveys, they're using pulse surveys, they're getting the sentiment of employees as they make decisions about hybridity. So that was good. The less great is that there is still a big disconnect between the levels at many credit unions. And so senior leadership has one view about hybrid work and maybe think there should be less virtual in the hybrid, whereas line managers and individual contributors that we spoke to had a very different kind of view. And so a lot of what we talk about in the survey is how to kind of start to reconcile that. And this is going to be a long process. It's going to take many years, but it's important to at least recognize a bit of that disconnect at the different levels that we see across various different credit unions.
Yeah, that's great. I'm going to go to you, Kamela, in terms of this. What are you doing at your credit union in terms of employee work flexibility, and what are some of the trade-offs from the business to the employee, and where have the tensions and opportunities appeared for you folks?
Yes. So, certainly starting during the pandemic, a year and years, I guess it really became, we certainly immediately converted to a hybrid work model, and we have retained that. And even though now that we're fully functioning and really out of the pandemic, we have talked with our employees. Initially, we had wanted our employees to come back into the office. We said 2 to 3 days a week, and we got pushback from our employees. And so we changed our expectations and gave them greater flexibility. And we've said we'd like them to be in the office 8 days a month. And so they can kind of pick and choose when they do that. We obviously still are a retail business, so we have many employees that are, in person every day too. And that's been a little bit of a rub as well, because they feel like, even though they're in the retail part of the business, they still would like to be able to have that flexibility. And so we've tried to really offer some different scheduling options for some of them. We've also offered what we call gig jobs, so the gig economy, but we brought it in-house. And we have allowed employees to gig in other areas of the business. One, to have some of that flexibility that they're looking for and where they work and when they work, but also for career development purposes to learn about a different job they might be interested in. I think one of our biggest challenges in that flexibility has been we've really noticed a sense of not a strong sense of belonging like we used to have. We hired a lot of people during the pandemic years, and we had such a strong collaborative culture, and we've lost some of that, we feel like, because of the hybrid model.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. And I don't know, go to Rhonda, actually, if you have any thoughts there. How do you keep that collaboration going in a hybrid model? Have you looked at that? What's your organization doing around that?
Yeah, I can't say I've got any secrets that are going to be different than what most other people are doing. What I would say is what I do have is an incredible intranet or knowledge management system that it was strong prior to COVID, we really elevated it to its next level. We actually won a national award for our ability to utilize our intranet for keeping employees engaged. We have a great executive team who pretty much anytime I go and ask them to do something, they say yes. And so things like having executive video blogs going out, or what we call vlogs, going out on a regular basis. Every 2 to 3 weeks, one of our executives is doing a video communication. And while it's still one way, it starts the dialogue going. It's doing virtual town halls. We've kept a lot of what we started and have carried it forward. So town halls, so that people have an opportunity to submit questions prior to, either by claiming the question, or they can do it anonymously. And then we answer all questions. If we run out of time, then we do video answers, or we do written answers in response. So information sharing, ensuring that people know where to get the information, and then understanding what's next. Our focus is trying to help people look around that very next corner and giving the insight into what's coming. And if we can do that well, we find that the stress levels are lower, anxiety is lower. We're able to really meet them where they are.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. I'm going to sort of move into a slightly different topic, although connected. And, Robert, can you talk a little bit about, coworker engagement and empowerment and what you're doing in that area?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, one of our core values is together we empower, and we really want all of our coworkers to feel empowered, that they have the ability to be involved with decision making and the future of the credit union. So we've worked really hard to make opportunities for them to be engaged. And the very first is our onboarding program. Their first week of employment is really just about getting to know Clearwater and what we're trying to accomplish in our communities. And everyone from our CEO to the full executive team to other leaders, present and have discussion about our strategy. And then at least once a year, our CEO holds strategy sessions with every coworker. During the pandemic, they happened to be remote, but this year we brought everyone on site again. Small groups of up to 20, where Jack, our CEO, reviews the strategy, what we've accomplished, where we're headed, and then also gets feedback from all coworkers to take into the next strategic planning session. So it's really helped ensure that coworkers know their voice is part of that process, and has really helped with engagement with success of the strategy.
Yeah, that's great. The recent study, and I'm going to point this one to you, Rhonda, that, the McLean and Company, the HR Trends Report, talent acquisition, number one in 2021, number one in 2022. But the employee experience has moved up from, I think it was fifth in 2021 to second in 2022. So I'd love your kind of, is this an accurate assessment based on your experience? And there is that, what are some approaches you have to creating this glue to get employees and then keep them?
Yeah, so thank you so much. Lori, sometimes I'm embarrassed to say this in front of other HR people, so bear with me, but we've been very lucky that we're able to fill our roles, and we haven't entered into that scarcity experience that so many others have entered into. And I don't know if that's because our brand is so strong in our community. I'd like to think that's what it is. And so we're just going to go with that, right? But what I can tell you is we also have been able to reduce our turnover rate over the past 3 years. And that's something we're very proud of, but it wasn't an accident. It was incredibly intentional. And it wasn't one thing. I mean, people always call me and say, Rhonda, what's the one thing you did? I'm like, I can't answer that question with one thing. It wasn't. We took a multifaceted, a true holistic approach to engaging each and every employee. And it worked, because not only have we reduced our turnover rates, but we've also, Gallup recognized us now 2 years in a row as being in the top 2% worldwide in our employee engagement scores. So what we're doing is working. So just a couple of quick things, and they don't cost a dime, people. That's the best part. Is letters of gratitude, is asking each executive to write 5 letters of gratitude a week and mail it to someone's home. And so mailing it to their home, if you give it to them in the office, it's always going to sit on their desk, and the people that they work with will know about it. But when you mail it to their home, now the people that are most important to them in their lives hear about how wonderful they are at work, and they get a glimpse into who they are at work as well. So that means that executives have to be talking to people to find out who's doing wonderful things. And so getting every people manager, but especially our execs, to do stay interviews with people that they encounter in the hallways, even that when they're delivering, I have them delivering, treats like breakfast tacos, right? We're in Texas, people. We deliver breakfast tacos. We also do kolaches and other ice cream, but we deliver treats. The executive team's the one who's pushing the cart and handing out, being of service to others. But in those conversations, they're doing stay interviews. What's causing you to jump out of bed in the morning? What causes you to push your snooze alarm? Who's someone who's been helpful to you in the last week? What did they do? Because that's how they find out who to write those cards of gratitude with. Doing side-by-sides and sitting side by side, spending an hour a month in the contact center or in our call center. So those are just a few of the things that we're doing to engage our employees. And all I can tell you is that it's working. Oh. So, and like I said, it doesn't cost much except for me begging for them to do things and them saying yes.
No, those are interesting. Sekou, from your perspective, from the research side, what are you seeing on, talent war, talent acquisition?
Yeah, well, first, let me say, before I was in North Carolina, I was for 11 years at the University of Texas, and still am a member of University Federal Credit Union. So I can attest to all that Rhonda is saying. It's true. It's just something about it. And you made me miss Texas with the talk of kolaches and breakfast tacos. Oh, man. Okay. But as far as thinking about not only the talent acquisition, but then also engagement, both of these are top of mind, right? So I saw when you sent this out, this does not surprise me at all. So on one hand, on the recruitment side, what I think I'm seeing a lot, both in the credit union space and outside the credit union space, is a lot more on the offensive. So whereas before, maybe organizations we go to some places, we find people. Now there's a lot more outreach, a lot more thoughtfulness, trying to get referrals, trying to really dig and find some good quality candidates, which is good, which is exactly what they should be doing. And on the other side, right, thinking about engagement, keeping people there, that's a bit of a mixed bag, right? Because one of the things that I've noticed with the pandemic and the post-pandemic is the worlds between personal and work have just kind of blurred in ways that make some people uncomfortable, right? Whereas before, I knew somebody, but I didn't know their living situation. I didn't know they had cats and dogs. I didn't know if they were caretaking for an older parent. Now these are things that are part of work conversations in a way that they weren't. And so in organizations where managers have been equipped and trained to have these discussions that maybe were personal, yes, people about their health, about their monetary, financial situation, et cetera, some managers might feel ill-equipped to do that, but that's becoming the norm now. And so engagement, much like Rhonda was saying about being able to go in and have these conversations, even if they veer off into uncomfortable terrain, is really vital. And so organizations that are pouring into their managers to do this, I think, are seeing some of these benefits.
Yeah. Kamela, anything to add here from your organization, from your vantage point on these topics?
Yes. A strategy that we are tackling, we really started defining it last year, and we will act upon it and get more feedback from our employees this year. We're referring to it as the employee of one. And the idea of the employee of one really answers the question, how might we customize or personalize the employee's experience and allow it to evolve throughout the employee life cycle? And so kind of borrowing it quite honestly from member side, right? We've had this philosophy with our members. We know a lot about our members. We have a lot of data. We have a lot of information. So how do we present the right questions, the right products, the right offerings based on the information that we have? And so it's converting that really to an employee value proposition. And for us, one of the very first things we're going to do this first quarter of this year is do a total compensation survey with our employees, really asking them questions about what levers might they like us to pull or might look different, based on where they are again in their personal needs and their life cycle, what's important to them. And I did a podcast on this topic about a year and a half ago, and I spoke to the difference of an employee who's just starting their career. We might be their first or second job. They might be in their 20s, and they might have finished school and are just starting their career, and they're concerned about career growth. And I don't understand benefits. I've always been on my parents' plan. What do I have to do? I need to make sure I can make my rent each month. That person's needs are very different than someone who is in their late 50s, getting closer to thinking about retirement. Have I saved enough money? I'm at the pinnacle of my career, so career growth isn't necessarily a focus of mine, but have I prepared enough, and am I still learning and growing in my career? So it's really thinking about all the spectrum of what employees' needs are and how can we pull the different levers from pay to benefits to career development to flexibility in their schedules to when, where, and how they work. That's
great.
What we're really going to try to do.
Yeah, no, I like that approach. Robert, are you doing anything that you want to add into this conversation at all? Any perspectives?
Yeah, I mean, all very similar to what's been shared. It's a lot of just making sure to connect with coworkers and making sure that they feel safe to share what's going on in their life or their world. We've been having a lot of coworkers with daycare struggles. Everything from finding just daycare in general to being able to afford daycare. So, sitting down with them, trying to understand what the challenge is so then we can look for a solution to help them. And I'm finding that even just having the conversation and making that space goes such a long way. Because they want people to understand what the challenges they have just to get to work in the morning.
Yeah.
Great. I appreciate all the comments here. I think they're very helpful. Going to switch into a different topic, and I'll start out with Sekou with your thoughts on this. DEI is a newer area that's been added to HR's role, and what are most organizations? Where are credit unions in their DEI journey from your perspective, and what is fundamental to its success?
Yeah. So I will do a shameless plug to a report that was published about a year ago now, by former colleagues from Filene Fellows, Quinetta Roberson, and Mackenzie Preston, and they did a survey for credit unions about this. And one of the things that came up from that has kind of changed my mind about the discussion is it is much less about policies and much more about bundles of policies.
Huh.
Right. And so what seems to be moving the needle as far as bottom line, as far as retention, these kind of numbers that we are all paying attention to, is not that we are now we have a CDO, right, a chief diversity officer. That in and of itself is not enough. But if you have that, and you've instituted some policies that are related to staffing, and you've started to hold managers accountable for, so all of these things have to be bundled together. And so, one of the things that I find to be really heartening in going and talking with credit unions is that they're adjusting, right? They went in with one view. Okay, this is what we're going to do. Okay, that's not working. All right, let's kind of try it. And where you get some resistance in some other organizations, I have found credit unions to be way more genuine. And so that's been really helpful. And I would hope that we're seeing that reflected in the climate surveys and in the engagement surveys of the credit union employees, because most credit union employees I know are in general just happier, feel more aligned with purpose, feel like their organization cares about them in a way that you don't find in a lot of other similar sized organizations in the sector.
Yeah. Kamela, where are you folks on the DEI journey, and what's in place, and what are you working on?
Sure. We certainly have had an expectation around DEI, for a long time in our organization, but certainly, as many other organizations, I think, began to take more shape and take it more seriously as a way of doing business over the last several years. And we established a strategic plan, a 3-year plan of things that we wanted to do. And we've been working really hard to make sure that it's not just a people strategy, it's really how we want to run our business. And it's a different way of doing business. And so I always describe it when I'm talking about it to any of our audiences, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And we've come a long way in the last 2 years, but we still have a long way to go. And we've been doing a lot of training and a lot of awareness, I think, educational awareness for our employees. We sponsored for all of our levels of leadership this year. We sponsored inclusive leadership. How to be an inclusive leader? What does that look like? What does that mean? We also did storytelling, and we hosted those virtually. And we allowed employees, kind of gave them a script that they could prepare, and then they could share if they chose to, volunteer to share their story. And I think that was very powerful. People just getting to know you on a different level, and maybe getting to know a personal experience that they may not have the awareness of about you, that makes you unique or makes you feel the way that you feel. Very powerful. We also did a training session on allyship and how to be a good ally. What does that mean? And how do you show up and do that for your coworkers or your peers? And so a lot of it has been building awareness and opening people's thoughts and minds. We focused also on unconscious bias, and we continue to build upon that. We have employee committees. We have an advisory council. We are looking at, really how we listen to our employees a lot, and they give us a lot of feedback. And we did some questions in our engagement survey this year, and we did 2 around how are we progressing with DEI and their sense of feeling a sense of belonging and a sense of support in the organization. We got very favorable marks. So we feel like that we're making the right strides forward.
Yeah, sounds like it. I mean, you touched on leadership as well, and I'm just going to throw a question over to you, Robert. And, when you look at leadership in organizations, what it looks like today may be different in the future. So paint that picture for us. What does leadership look like in the future, and how do we prepare for the future? How do we prepare our leaders?
Yeah, I think what comes to mind was already mentioned, and I can't remember if it was Sekou or Rhonda that mentioned it, but I think the leader of the future is going to have to deal with different things than what they've had to deal with. I think in the past it's been more focused on the job, but as we went through the pandemic and are now coming out of it, I think leaders had to, in some ways, provide medical advice, counseling, coaching around childcare. And so I think things like that are going to continue. And I also think leaders are also going to have to learn how to manage diversity. As the workforce changes, it's only going to become more diverse. And leaders are going to have to know how to manage that and what it means and what it doesn't mean. And how do you lead a diverse team into the future?
Yeah. Sekou, I know you have some thoughts on, the board's role in leadership in the future. Maybe it's more specifically on CEOs, but being the top of the house in terms of leadership, what thoughts do you have on the board's role in that future CEO leader that they need?
Yeah. I always try to be very careful when I talk to boards, because I also talk to CEOs, and the CEOs are like, "Hey, what are you telling our board?" So I think the ideal archetype of a board is that it is a strategic advisor to senior executives, right? And so it's not that you are the micromanager, and it is not that you are the rubber stamp giver. It is that you collaborate with senior leadership. So first, they have to feel comfortable bringing problems to you, right? So one of the big things I coach to them is say, there are for sure problems that your senior executives are dealing with, and they're probably hesitant to bring them up to you because they don't know if you're going to judge them or what you might do or what have you might be. So developing that kind of psychological trust within the boardroom is a really big one, because if you don't know what's going on, then you can't help, right? And then once you get that, right, sometimes that takes a while. It's really about, I try to teach them how to ask really good questions, and questions that are not, what are you doing about that? But more, what if, or how might we think about, or, hypotheticals, right? Just to ask questions to kind of get them to expand their thinking on certain points of view, right? Because you bring a plethora, as board members, you bring a plethora of experiences in your own orgs, in your own life, that maybe this leader is unaware of. And so being able to provide that from an advisory perspective is building the relationship, and then using an inquisitive, curious sort of approach to nudge and cajole and help, and not micromanage. I'm on the record. I did not say that board should, but yeah, that to me is really good governance in the credit union space.
Yeah. Rhonda, where are you seeing your CEO spend their time, and has, where they're spending their time changed, and where should they be spending their time?
Well, Lori, our CEO has been on the job since November. Okay. And so, although he was an internal hire, and so he is spending his time truly building the infrastructure that he wants to have. As somebody who's been in the organization for 18 years and having his eye on this role for 18 years, I think he's had a lot of time to plan. And so he's really doing a great job of, being articulate about the why. It may be because there's somebody called Rhonda Hall who's nagging him constantly.
I was wondering.
But being very articulate about the why this is necessary, that he wants to make this change. So right now we really are going through an awful lot of change, and it's all with a positive trajectory. And it's based upon a brand new strategic plan that also happened to roll out in the October, November timeframe. So I don't know if I answered the question you asked. I'm not sure I can. I will say he is very much in the strategy space, and then occasionally he's crop dusting down into the operational side, because he has such a passion and such an internal knowledge. And so when we're trying to turn our ship, right, he's coming in for a landing, and then he's pulling right back up and going back up.
Yeah. I think, the job of a CEO can be very situational. Where are you on your journey? What are the issues you're dealing with today? So I appreciate that answer. I've really enjoyed
I'd love to answer that question in a year.
Okay, well, I'm going to put this in your diary so everyone
You got it.
Mark it in your calendars. I do appreciate all of your time today, and I'm going to end with one last question that I want to have each of you. So you're important leaders with a lot of knowledge in the HR space. So, and I'll start with you, Kamela. This question of the job of the HR leader is certainly different than it was 10, 15 years ago. It's fulsome, it's complex. And what personal advice do you have for HR leaders to help them navigate this new world?
I would say one is to leverage your collective knowledge of your team, both your peers, your staff, and your board and your employees. I have this belief that as leaders, we should be lifelong learners, and we should remain curious and read a lot and research a lot and ask good questions and have an opinion about things, and continue to remain curious, I think would be my advice.
Yeah, that's great. And Robert, what advice would you have?
My advice would be for HR leaders to make sure they have a self-care plan. One of the things I've really learned through the pandemic is that we can't take care of our coworkers if we're not taking care of ourselves. And I really, really think that that's so important for HR professionals. And I don't think a lot of us have a self-care plan. So just, make time for you. And we're so giving, but remember you have to be taken care of.
Yeah, for sure. Sekou, what advice do you have?
And all the good ones got taken. No, I'll get strategic. I guess as the academic, that's my role here. Faced with a lot of challenges and changes about the nature of managing people, and so a phrase you hear a lot in dialogue is a pivoting. Credit unions need to pivot, organizations to pivot. And I think pivoting is necessary. But what you should remember about pivoting is one part of you has to stay still. One part of you has to be solid. And so as you're thinking about changes, think about what are the things that I don't want to change? What are the things that these are our values. These are the culture, the things that we want to reify. And if we're going to move other things, that's fine. But part of us needs to stay still. And so figure out within the HR space, within the culture, within values, what are the parts you're going to protect and keep the same? And what are the parts that you're going to tinker with, explore, try new things to attempt to pivot, to change with what's going on in the environment?
Yeah. And so, Rhonda, last word to you. What advice do you have?
Oh, wow. For me, it's make sure that every employee knows how valuable they are. Make sure every employee knows how important they are. And then make sure you're telling yourself the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of what Robert is talking about in terms of that self-care. I think that if we start with value and we start with importance, and then we take the time to apply it to ourselves, we can truly lead anyone through anything. But it does start with that truly finding value in each individual.
And that's great. I want to thank you for your time today. I know you're busy people and you took the time to spend with us. I think your advice, your tips, your experiences will prove very valuable to our listening and watching audience. So thanks again for your time.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.